everybody. I'm David with Bolivar Live, and I'm here with Chandra with Aaron and Franklin, but she also sits on the board of TWIA. And as many of you know from our show last week, TWIA had a meeting Tuesday morning that lasted all morning and a little bit after lunch, if I'm not mistaken. But one of the big things the TWIA board was going to do was vote on a 10% rate increase. And Chandra, it didn't turn out as we planned, did it?
Well, I mean, you're right. I mean, it did. The board did vote. It was a 6-3 vote, and they did vote to accept the 10% rate increase that was given to us by our actuarial and underwriting committee. The three people that did not support that were all the coastal representatives, who were myself, George Neblett, and Peggy Gonzalez. All the rest of the board members did support that 10% increase.
Okay, but there's a but in here.
Yeah, but
there's still time.
There's still time, right? So we had a really great outpouring of public support. We had public comment. There was over 1,500 people online that had submitted public comment. There were probably, I think we had 30 speakers that spoke during the morning against it. There was only, I believe, one person that spoke in favor of it. So we did have quite a lot of public comment that was against this rate increase, including Senator Mays Middleton, Terry Leo Wilson. There was a Brazoria representative and one down from the Valley. So, and of course, Todd Hunter. So we had some good legislative representation there as well that were speaking against this. But the next thing is that commissioner has to approve it. So we do have the opportunity for the commissioner to either flat out say no or reduce it. She does have the ability to do that, but that's completely in her purview. So, I would recommend those 1,500 people or more need to get with their legislators and put pressure on them to talk to the commissioner to not make that happen. Even if she does approve it or some form of rate increase, it still has to go, the governor could still shoot it down. That happened about 5 years ago. So, so there's still a couple of avenues to keep it from going into effect. But right now, the way it stands, that was the board's, what the board adopted. And that's what they're planning on happening starting in January on new policy.
Okay, let's talk about, because before we went on air, we were talking about Burl and how much you thought you were going to be using. And there's actually a good point in this that was brought up during this event or this vote.
So one of the biggest costs right now for us is reinsurance. And part of that is that's the very top tier of our funding structure. And so once we set what we call the PML, the probable maximum loss for what we feel like we would have in a storm season, we set that based on statute. And they give us, a little guidance, but not enough guidance. So we have to decide every year, what does that number look like? And this year was $6.5 billion. And that's what we feel like we would need to cover a major storm event on the coast and be solvent. And so we have our funding structure that takes care of that. And whatever that gap is in the top between the funding that's already preordained, what's in our bank account, which is the CRTF, and then that reinsurance, we have to buy that. Right. Well, that number, if you buy more reinsurance, then that premium goes up. And then they look at our risk, have we had storms, have we had claims, and then of course, what kind of money we have. Well, we're about to exhaust that money. We're about to exhaust everything in our piggy bank to pay for Beryl, which is good. So at least we're not moving into our funding structure. So we don't have to take out loans. We don't have to assess the companies. But, the funding structure hasn't changed in a long time. It's $500 million in each little tranche there. And that hasn't changed in a long time. Those tranches have not gone up. Really, I feel like those fundings should be flipped. If it should be assessments first, then us taking loans, because if we take a loan, we're going to have to pay it back. And right now with interest rates, it's really, really high for us to pay those back. Back a long time ago, the last time we took bonds, I want to say it was like 8.5%. Now it's going to be probably over 10% to pay those bonds back. So hopefully we don't have any storms this year that would require us to take out bonds. But if we do, just know that we're going to pay those back, and they're going to want another rate increase. Yeah.
You know, when you and I were talking, we were talking about Burrell, and I said, well, you know, it didn't come into a major metropolitan area. It was down more in a, not a isolated, but less homes. It was different than if it would have hit Galveston or come on to Bolivar. And Galveston actually had some damage down on the west end. If it would have been moved 25 miles east, it would have been a whole different ballgame, because it would have come right through Galveston, sort of like Ike, up through the ship channel, affected us, Galveston, Kemah, and all that area in there, and then gone on up into Bay City and all that. What are the estimates? And I'm saying this just so that people can realize what the costs are now, because you know, building costs and repair costs have gone way, way up, probably up 50 to 60%, I would think, since Ike.
Yeah, a couple of things. A lot of the damages that we're seeing, I mean, while they were significant, a lot of them weren't over deductible. So the people have changed their deductibles because it's so expensive to have the policy. They've moved to that 5% deductible, which, you know, on a $200,000 house is $10,000. Well, I mean, that's a re-roof right there. So I mean, you're not looking at you're not looking at really being able to file a claim and get anything back, you know. So right now there's about a little over 26,000 claims that have been put in for Beryl. The current estimates are that we're going to pretty much exhaust our catastrophe reserve fund. Right now it's $451 million, and they're looking at it to be about like 440 is what they're thinking. So we'll have maybe a little bit left in there, but not much.
Yeah, and so there's more to taxing, I mean, the rate increase than just, hey, we're just going to go up and pat our pockets, because you're really not patting anyone's pocket, because it's not a company as far as someone making money. This is
we're not profiting or anything.
This is just covering the
expenses. Anything that we have extra, like every year, anything we have extra from paying, by the time we pay our claims and we take our policy premium, anything we have extra, we put in that catastrophe reserve fund. And, you know, had we not been doing that the last 7 years since Harvey, we would have nothing. We would have nothing in the bank. And so now today we have money to pay claims for Beryl, which is great. But if anything else happens between now and the end of hurricane season, we'll have to move into our funding structure. We'll have to take out loans. We'll have to, you know, if it goes to the next level, we'll have to take out assessments against the member companies, which is all the big companies, the State Farm, the Allstate Farmers, everybody that's, you know, that's writing policies in Texas will have to pay their part based on the book of business that they write. So it's a big, you know, I mean, it's a big concern that we get through this hurricane season the rest of the time without anything going on. Otherwise, it's going to really dip into that funding structure.
What's the estimates if y'all raise it 10%? How's that going to help you? How much is that going to raise y'all's funds or anything?
Yeah, so that was one of the points that I had made. So they had given us, when they did the actuarial and underwriting committee meeting, they gave us this chart, and the chart showed like what our actuarial adequacy that they had estimated versus whether or not we took a rate increase. And we could kind of see what those trends look like. And so when you look at the time period after Ike to about Harvey, they had taken like 5% like every year. They call it a glide path model, where they just kind of gradually, you know, increase the premium over time, and that's kind of was their model. But you really didn't see an impact on those actuarial numbers coming down. And so
because costs have gone up so much.
Right. So you get to the point where now, you know, we haven't taken really a rate increase like in about 4 or 5 years. I mean, we took one and we had several other rate votes, but they didn't go into effect. So once the commissioner got rid of it, once the governor got rid of it. So we've had a few other times where they tried to do that and it didn't, you know, it didn't go into effect. But just even looking at those numbers, you know, we really are still hovering at about the same place that we were when we were taking 5% a year. Right. So that was my point. It's like, okay, whether we take 5%, whether we do nothing, or we take 10%, it's not moving the scale. It's not moving the needle. We're not becoming more adequate by taking these increases. Although, because of Beryl, what this will do is allow us to put more money in the bank so that we'll have a little bit there.
More reserve.
Yeah, a little bit more reserve, exactly.
Well, when this goes from, has two more steps it has to go through. When will we know? Is it going to be 10% as they requested? Is it going to be 5%?
Right.
When will this finalize?
So we're required to file this by August 15th. So August 15th, is the day that we have to file our board recommendation to the commissioner's office. And I don't know how long she has to review it. I want to say it's October 15th. So she has a little bit of time to review it. But I would say start putting pressure now. If you don't like this outcome, start putting pressure now on your legislators and say, hey, y'all need to talk to the commissioner's office. Y'all need to talk to the governor's office. Y'all need to try to set this aside. Make a commitment to change the funding structure. Make a commitment to share this expense with, TWIA's other member company, other member companies in the market, even if they're not writing wind, because that's part of the problem is that everybody just stepped out of the market and said, we're not going to write wind. We're only going to write auto. We're only going to write this. And they write all these policies. They write homeowners policies. They write everything else. And they won't write wind. And they're going to dump that on TWIA. Yeah. But then they don't want to take any responsibility when something happens. So they want to have all the benefit and none of the risk. So, we have to put some of that back on the member companies to take some of this risk, whether that's through assessments. For example, the other sister company of TWIA is Fair Plan. Okay, Fair Plan does not have this funding structure. Fair Plan has they have an assessment funding structure. So when they are out of money, they assess member companies.
Right.
And that would be a better funding structure for TWIA. If we just mirrored what they were doing in Fair Plan, which is tier two counties, so Harris County and all that, tier N, that would be better than what we have right now as TWIA. So we've got to really, Mays did a really good job last year trying to get some legislation through. We know how the Texas legislature works. You can't get anything through the first time. It's got to go through the iterations, and you got to work on it a little bit. So hopefully when he picks that up this year, which he seemed to be dedicated to doing that yesterday, I feel like, we can maybe make some really good progress with that legislation moving forward, because he was very passionate about this. And hopefully that can be one of his, missions to, get that and move it forward.
I know Mays has really been posting a lot through social media, talking about it and talking about getting letters sent in and stuff. And he does amazing work. I know he's helped us down here on Bolivar, and really everyone. He really goes out of his way, and I'm anxious to see how he approaches it and what he's going to do, because he was already against the rate increase and stuff. And, you and I talked last week about what we thought would happen, and it didn't happen that way. But there's still a couple more steps. And so if you're in the counties, the other thing real quick, we were talking earlier, and you said out of all the coastal counties during Beryl, and I want people to know how much Beryl actually hit Texas. There were only, I think, 3 counties, if I'm not mistaken, that didn't have claims from Hurricane Beryl.
Yeah, they gave us kind of a recap of Beryl yesterday, and they gave us a breakdown of claims per county. And there was like only 3 or 4 that had no claims. Everybody else had some amount of claim. And of course, some areas more concentrated than others. But there's a lot of people, like I was saying earlier, that aren't going to meet their deductible, and they're like, I'm not going to file a claim. What's the point? Yeah. So there's probably a lot of people more than that have damage that just haven't.
But because they've raised in order to save money, they've raised their I'm tongue-tied.
Deductible.
Yeah. And so they may not have claims. In fact, I talked to someone yesterday that said, I was going to go out because I've been shooting drone photos of roofs, and they said, well, by the time we do the claim and our deductible, there's really not any difference there, and so we're going to have to go ahead and pay for it, or it'll be better for us just to pay for it.
Yeah, because if you file a claim, then they're going to raise your premium anyway. And that's exactly what happens. I know that when people are making that decision about do I change my deductible, one of the other big changes, and this happens every year, and so you really have to think about what your needs are, because every year those policies are adjusted based on the value of the property. So if you had a property that's worth $200,000 and then next year it's going to be worth $220,000, well, they're going to automatically up it to $220,000, and they're going to add premium to cover $220,000, not $200,000. So and they're going to look at replacement value, not just like appraised value. So you have to really decide, what kind of policy do I want? And part of that's having a relationship with the agents and understanding, what you're getting. But a lot of people end up just saying, oh, well, just increase that increase the deductible because I can't afford the increase plus the premium hike on, that. So it's a compounding problem.
Yeah. Well, I'm anxious to see, and we'll keep everyone updated. As we get more news, we'll try and do shows on it, letting you know where things are going down here. I know from myself and Chandra, you're on the board. You're also in the engineering. You're in the coastal region too. And so, it affects everyone down here. And it's just, costs keep going up. And then we had the stock market that went to heck the other day. And so, it's not looking good. We need to get everything on the narrow. At least we weren't Florida and the East Coast, because they're fighting a mixture of Burl and Harvey and Imelda put together because of the flooding they're having. Yeah. And so I want to send out our prayers to everyone from Florida all the way up the East Coast. I think at this recording, it's around Georgia and up through
South Carolina.
Already. So anyway, but we'll be back with more information on this as it happens, let you know exactly what's going on with a rate increase for TWIA this year, or next year, I should say. So, Chandra, thanks for joining us this morning. Until next time, I'm David with Bolivar Live. Y'all have a great day, great week. Come see us. God bless, and bye-bye.